What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Mastercrafted. Today we are talking all about the secondary deck and how you should be prepping for them, whether you should be planning to probably play them, try to score them, or whether you should be like, okay, cool, this is either getting flipped for something new or I'm ditching it for a CP. Phil, how do you feel? I know we've talked about challenger cards, but how do you feel about the secondary cards in this new mission deck?
I think they're a definite improvement from where Pariah Nexus was. We got improvements for Chapter Approved 25-26 that help us play the game and reduce variance to a significant amount. So I like the Chapter Approved 25-26 mission decks overall. Because I do think they got better, and it allows us to play the game in a certain way. So I like them.
Yeah, there's definitely still a few things I think each of us would like to change about some of these cards, but in general, it definitely is an improvement. So what's the format we're going to be running with today as we work through these secondaries?
Yeah, so we're gonna qualify them in two different categories. We're gonna say hold it or fold it, because there's situations where we do want to hold that secondary and try to score it, and there are situations where we're happy like getting rid of it, and that may be getting rid of it for a CP, that may be cycling it to get a new strategy or a new secondary, or that might be something where we're looking to pitch it at the end of our opponent's turn, which is now something that we can do. We won't get any CP for it, but it does allow us to play the game in a very interesting way.
Yes, yeah, and obviously this is kind of subjective. It's going to always depend on the game state and things like that. But in general, kind of going through and being like, these are the best of the secondaries that are very low risk, high reward, and these are the ones that probably could lead to you being out of position, overcommitting, or just generally impossible to score for a lot of armies.
Yeah, for sure. And let's just rip the Band-Aid off and start with the first one, because this can be one of those things that your army, or at a certain time in the game, especially first turn, you may never score, but you have an option here with Behind Enemy Lines, because if it is the first battle round, you can draw a new secondary mission, but the baseline of it is end of your turn, 1 unit from your opponent, excluding aircraft and battle shock units, is wholly within your opponent's deployment zone, or 2 or more units from your army, excluding aircraft and battle shock, are wholly within your deployment zone. And this is also one that you can take as fixed.
Yes, it is a very, very good secondary for some armies, and other armies not so much. I think it's definitely, if you're playing Vanguard Marines or things like that, into the late game, you're hoping you're drawing this, because people just do not have the resources to screen you out long term. In general, though, I think this is one of those, as just before a hold it or fold it, in general, unless it's just you're automatically planning to put 2 units in somebody's deployment zone, you're fishing for the small one. You're just trying to put one thing across that line, trying to get the 3 VP, because generally that one extra VP, unless it's the last round and you need it to win, you're just overcommitting resources for 1 victory point. And I think that's one of the things I see too often, are people like, oh, I got to get 2 back there. Just get 1 in most situations.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fair. There's some armies that do it well, like Nids and the stupid Biovore. He can throw his little mines over there. Well, that counts as a unit, unfortunately. Gene Stealer Cult, love this. I think even some very fast armies like World Eaters, like Space Wolves, that are already trying to get into your deployment zone anyways, are doing this. And this could be one of those ones where you're not dropping a unit in deep strike behind your opponent, but you are being very aggressive to get in your opponent's deployment zone. And there's some armies that do that incredibly well.
Yes, I would definitely agree. For me, I still think this is one of those where, unless you really have just extra trash that can go do this, or it's built into your army, as a general rule, I personally think this is still a fold it, because just 3 VP is pretty mediocre. Like, there's a lot of things that will score as well or better a lot of the time.
Yeah. You have to make some pretty serious evaluations as to, hey, if I deep strike this unit back here, 1, is it just dead next turn, and am I okay with that? And 2, if it's not dead next turn, and like you've put it into a position where it's screened out, which doesn't happen very often, and it might live next turn, well, that's less risk. And obviously this secondary is even better.
Yeah. I think it's still great when it comes up and you're in the late game. If you have the ability, it's kind of just, if you're in the late game and you're just like free to do this, a lot of the times you're winning hard anyway for the most part, or you have bottom of turn. Things like that are kind of just on outliers. But yeah, in general, it's a fold it for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's perfectly fair. Okay, well, let's move on to the next one, because Lane, I know we talked about it when we saw Chapter Approved. We had a huge change for Bring It Down. It is now capped. But why is that so important? Why is that such a big deal? And I will caveat that with, if there's no monsters or vehicles on the field, you can discard this card and draw a new secondary, which is awesome. It means we don't get stuck with a dead draw. But why is this one so much better, specifically for our Imperial Guard, Tau, even some Space Marine builds? Why is this so much better?
Because now it only caps at 4. You cannot score more than 4 VP if your opponent just reaches out and decides to delete a couple of your tanks. It feels way less punishing in those scenarios. You're like, man, I need to have my go turn. It's still in their deck, and if they pull it and they pick up a couple of things, it's going to be super, super punishing. The other thing too is like crisis suits for Tau. They're floating at that particular, what was it, 14 wounds or whatever. There was a couple options where you could go up to 15. But, it would just punish you for giving up even more bring it down points. And so just being 4 across the board, it is now definitely easier to get 4. You aren't just getting 2 for killing my Scout Sentinel. So it is a swing up in the minimum effort it takes to get 4 points. But you're no longer able to be like, okay, cool. Well, I'm playing tactical against Knights even, and I just get lucky. I have 2 that are almost dead. And now, here's 12 points on a secondary just because of the timing. It definitely could be a feels bad.
Yeah, for sure. And I do like this change, even though a lot of my armies, some of my armies have a lot of vehicles, others definitely do not. I definitely like this change. I felt like it balanced well. I thought it was definitely needed. It definitely affects some people's list building overall, because I think even right now in the meta, the Chaos Knight, Imperial Knight meta, if we had old Bring It Down, where it was like, you could score those points, I think that actually hurts Chaos Knights and Imperial Knights significantly. But this is one that you can take fixed as well. And Lane, I know we've talked about fixed often. It is very difficult to find a situation where you want to take it, but are there any that stand out for you for wanting to take fixed, Bring It Down?
Oh man, I think honestly the only one right now is maybe Lords of Dread. Like that literally is the game. They are going to stat check you. They're going to throw 6 knights in your face and just go, hey, you better kill them. Those are each worth 6 apiece. So that's not bad. If I bring down 4, I have maxed my 20 or my 20 secondary for that card, and if I probably throw Assassination in there as well, that's just the game I'm playing at that point. That's the only one right now, though, that I think is remotely worth it, because as soon as you start throwing mini knights into the mix, they're worth 2, and that's a huge difference.
Correct. Absolutely. Bring It Down, Assassinate. I would definitely consider that. If my army was capable of picking up those targets, then I would definitely consider it.
Yeah, I do think that's the only other thing I would say. Even with the 4 VP, I still think this is one of the things people can overcommit to. It's not as bad as it used to be when people are like, oh man, I can score 12 points. And they throw their whole army out there trying to max this secondary. It was a huge trap then. It's not as big of a trap. Now you're just like, oh, I commit 1 resource, I can kill a rhino or one small thing if they have it. But I still see people be like, oh, I got this. I have to go peek that. You don't have to go peek that. It's still only 4 VP. It's not worth giving up a major resource to go kill a small vehicle of theirs.
Yeah, absolutely. That's completely fair. All right, well, let's move on to the next one. Storm Hostile. It is another one that if it is the first battle round, you can draw a new secondary and shuffle it back into the deck, which is once again fantastic. And this is, you just control an objective marker that your opponent controlled at the start of the turn, or your opponent did not control any objective markers at the start of the turn, and you control 1 or more objective markers that you did not control. So if your opponent is wiped, but they don't have any objectives, and then you get onto a new one, that would be the way you score that as well. And that can only be done turn 2, which is interesting, but it is another fixed that we could potentially take.
Yes, it is a fixed option. And real quick, before we dive into this, we forgot to say, is Bring It Down a hold it or a fold it? It's a hold it.
Oh,
it's
a hold it, yes.
Yes, gotta make sure that if that was not clear enough. And Storm Hostile, right there with it. Storm is so good. It's going to get cycled back in the first turn anyway. You're almost always going to be planning to go deny your opponent somewhere. So just being able to go toe on and shoot something off or fight it off, either way, you're playing around primary. Storm is a great card. It's one of the best ones.
Yeah. There are situations where you may not want to do it. And there's some armies that definitely struggle with it, because if you don't have the assets to flip an objective, or it's not guaranteed, or it's impossible, there are situations where you might want to ditch it. But then we need to talk about, like, okay, if you're ditching this, I think we fall into a few different issues. Maybe we're not list building properly. Maybe we're not executing our game plan properly, or maybe we're just losing the game straight up and we're not able to Storm Hostile, which happens sometimes. Sometimes we lose games of 40k, and that's okay. But make sure we put some serious thought into this because we need to be scoring this as many times as possible.
Right. And I think one of the other big caveats here is I think a lot of people also read it as the fixed version, where it just says you control one or more objectives that your opponent did control at the start of the turn. Whereas in tactical, if they did not control any at the start of their turn, you can still score it. And I have seen that get missed in games where somebody is just absolutely stomping somebody. It's not going to affect the game a ton. But again, if there isn't an objective to flip, you can still score that. So don't forget it.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And that is the fixed portion of it. So, like, you just got to be cognizant, right? You just got to pay attention. Well, Lane, is this our hold it or fold it?
It's a hold it for sure. Generally, you're always going to be able to do this. Early, it might be a little risky if you don't have resources in the right place, but in general, it's a hold it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, this next one's super easy. It's Defend Stronghold. Control the objective that's in your deployment zone, one or more objectives in your deployment zone. But first battle round, you have to get rid of it. You cannot keep it. It is not a can like all these other ones. It is, you will draw a new secondary and shuffle this one back into the mission deck.
Yes. Yeah, and it makes sense because it is a freebie. And in general, most of the game anyways, it is going to be a freebie unless, you and your opponent are really, spinning the board, really trying to outflank each other. In general, though, Defend Stronghold, it's going to be probably the easiest 3 points, but it's only 3 points. So it is an easy secondary. It's just not worth a lot. And that makes sense. It's not generally too tough to score.
Yeah, for sure. You do have to wait a full battle round to do it. So at the end of your opponent's at the end of your opponent's turn is when you will score this. So you do have to be cognizant of, there are some situations where your opponent knows that they have the opportunity to deny this. And if they do, maybe there's a world where you ditch this and get a CP, or maybe there's a world where you hold this and then ditch it at the end of your opponent's turn. That way you can get a new secondary the following turn for free without having to spend a CP to cycle it away. So Lane, hold it, fold it. What are we doing?
It's generally a hold it. Like, it's, if you have I guess as long as you can't score it, you can't really ditch it, is kind of the thing. I guess you could. This is one that is ditchable because it does not score until the end of your opponent's turn. So you could decide, if you're like, man, I really need a CP and you can score the other one. Defend is probably one of the better ones, I think, as it's only worth 3 VP as long as the other one in your hand at the time is worth more and you can do it. Ditch Defend, because if you can score, like we'll get to an engage, you have to score.
Yeah. Would you ever ditch this to stop your opponent from getting a challenger card?
100%. Not like, I would also ditch it to get a challenger card. It's worth 3 VP. If I get a challenger card myself the next round, the likelihood that I can probably score the 3 VP on the basically just have a pulse secondaries that come with them, or an insanely strong buff that I could give my army off of a 0 CP stratagem, I'm probably ditching Defend just on principle if I'm bottom of turn.
It might be worth it. It might be something you try to do. Just a thought for me personally.
And GW, please take that option away from me. Please get rid of challenger card.
Should not be able to do that. Should not willingly give up points to either get a challenger card or do something else. All right. Yeah. Engage on all fronts. This is one that we saw changed in chapter approved from Pariah Nexus. All it is one or more units from your army. They can't be battle shocked. They can't be aircraft. They got to be wholly within a table quarter and more than 6 inches away from the center. I have had multiple people forget that, and that's okay. It is unique in that sense. And now you get 2 table quarters for 1 VP, 3 table quarters for 2, and if you get all 4, it is 4 VP, and you score it at the end of your turn.
Yeah, this is generally, if I have the CP, I am recycling this, unless I am already planning to move into all 4 table quarters. If I cannot get into all 4, this one is a fold every time. Cycle that unless you do not have, like, you literally can't afford not to. It's not worth anything unless you get into 4.
Yeah, 2 feels pretty bad for 3 table quarters, honestly. Because you should be most likely exposing assets to do that. But there are some armies that just, like, once again, Tyranids, Genestealer Cult, I would say World Eaters, Blood Angels, Demons, like a lot of these armies really like Engage, but there are some armies that it's just not worth it because I'm not getting into 3 table quarters and I'm not going to overexpose a really important unit to try to get this. So yeah, I get that. Totally understand.
Yeah, generally a fold it for me. It has to already be in my plans, or it just nope.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the next one, another one that changed, marked for death. We got a lot of text here, Lane. The general gist of it is your opponent's got to select 3 units. They select their own 3 units. There are some stipulations. If there's only 1 or 2 units from the army, they still must select those units. And the selected units are the alpha targets. That is the same as we've seen before. If your opponent kills one of those 3 alpha targets, it's 5 VP. But now you, as their opponent, get to select 1 gamma target. And if you kill that gamma target, you get 2 VP, which is nice. But if there are no units on the battlefield, you can just discard this and draw a new secondary mission. Lane, marked for death, how are we feeling?
It's definitely better. This was probably the worst card in the entire deck during Pariah Nexus. It was insanely swingy. You get it, turn 1, turn 2, you're never going to kill what they mark. If you get it turns 4 and 5, the chances that they have enough things that they can mark safely is very low. And so it's just like, okay, well, here's 5 points. So that was pretty swingy. The other thing, the addition of the choose your own is still good. It is still nice. 2, I think, is more than reasonable. I think this is the only card I wish it has enough text already, but I do think it should be a recycle turn 1 in general. You have the option to.
Sure. Yeah, I would like to see that as well, because as you said, it can be so like, oh, well, I guess I'm just not scoring this round. Guess that's a free CP, which I don't necessarily am super upset with, but I do like the opportunity to score. So I don't want people to take that away from me.
Yeah. Generally, I think unless you have you have to have a killy army in general, and then a certain amount of mobility to go touch whatever targets you really want to not feel like this is a fold it, in my opinion. Generally, I'm probably just going to be recycling this one unless I get, something that's almost as bad. If I get engaged and marked for death turn 2, I'm like, great. This is a terrible draw. I'm scoring maybe 4 VP between the two of them. Like, you got to recycle one of them, in my opinion, most of the time.
Sure. I will say there are situations where I've held marked for death and not killed my gamma target because, let's say, Knights is a perfect example. They only have so many units, right? And if I keep marked for death and I don't score the gamma target, if they have some like Nurglings or whatever the case is, and I say, okay, that's fine. You marked your 3 big Knights, but they're all behind walls. But I'm going to leave marked for death there because if you come out, I'm going to get it. And I will get the 5 VP for it. But if you don't come out, fine, I'll just ditch it at the end of my opponent's turn. But now the trade-off would be you're not knocking me off primary because you have chosen to not come out because I've kept marked for death kind of hanging over your head.
Yeah, there is definitely some utility, wait and see what they, mark and stuff. And you can even give yourself a bad gamma target if, you're really pursuing it and say, hey, I'm not planning to score this turn, just going to hang on to it, wait to see if you step out. Because if you score the small one, the threat just isn't there anymore. So definitely something to look at. The other thing too is like if you're playing Grey Knights and they just like to pick up some of those units and they mark them, that's another great reason to hold on to it. They won't have the flexibility to put those back into strategic reserve without giving you 5 points.
Correct, because it specifically says remove from the battlefield for any other reason. So if they pull a unit back into Deep Strike at the end of your turn, well, then you get the 5 VP for it. So then we don't want to kill our gamma target, which is important. And I will say it says you can then select one of your opponents for gamma target. So you don't have to select one. It's not a must. It's just you can. So you could purposely not select the gamma target. That way, especially in the Grey Knights, you're like, okay, I'm not going to select one. I'm still going to go after the things I need to kill. But if you pick up any of those units that you didn't want me to touch, I will take the 5 VP for it.
Yeah, you really, especially, with how elite that kind of up-down army is, you really can mess with their plans if you just, because now, earlier in Pariah, people were expecting you to potentially do that if you had marked for death. Now, with the 2 VP, they're going to mark as if, they're like, oh, well, he'll just mark something and take the 2 points. And then you go, nope, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to make you keep your stuff right there. Enjoy. It actually is a reasonable strategy now.
It is, yeah, for sure, absolutely. Well, what is this? Is this hold it or fold it, Lane?
Man, I feel like more times than not, it is still a fold it. There's too many times where it's only going to be worth the 2 VP. There is utility. There are great reasons to hold it. But if we're only able to give one answer, in general, it's a fold it most of the time. that fold it becomes a hold it the later into the game you do go, though.
Sure, absolutely. I think that's a great way to sum it up. Okay, our next secondary, Established Locust. I feel like I always get this turn 1 or 2. It happens every time. I don't know why. Turn 1 or 2, I'm always pulling Established Locust. I very rarely get it at the end of the game. When I do, it feels great for certain armies, like my Gene Stealer Cult and stuff like that. But this is a unique one because it is not one that you can ditch turn 1. It owned the action, and this is the first one we've seen as an action. Takes place in your shooting phase. And at the end of your turn, if that unit is within your opponent's deployment zone or within 6 of the battle, it doesn't say wholly within 6, it just says within 6. And it doesn't say the objective in the middle, it says within 6 of the center of the battlefield, your unit establishes a locus. You get 2 VP for the center, and you get 4 VP if it's your opponent's deployment zone.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems really weird. I've talked crap on 3 VP cards already. But honestly, Establish is in like this weird thing where it's like I'm already putting things towards the center. There's always a staging ruin, or I need to go contest. Like there's a reason for me to just get the extra 2 VP a lot of the time. In a world without challenger cards, where I'm not like, oh well, I could just end up down 6 somehow by ditching this. You know, in a good game state, Establish isn't actually that bad. And again, as you get into the later game, your ability to just walk something into your opponent's deployment zone and get 4, like of all the action-based secondaries, it is probably one of the best for getting 4 if you're in that situation. And yeah, sure. if you're going towards the center, most of the time you're going to be moving up there with some trash, some OC units anyway.
Yep, absolutely. I totally agree. Like you're usually doing stuff on the center anyways. If you can get any combination of Established Locust with Area Deny or Secure No Man's Land or anything like that, those feel pretty nice because we're talking about an action secondary in combination with a scoring secondary, and that little trash unit hopefully is hyper efficient because they just scored us however many points, 7 for secure, or let's say same thing for area deny. Yeah, this is a hold it for me, Lane. The majority of the times I'm doing this. I'm taking the 2 points unless there's a very, very unique scenario.
Yep. Yeah. General rule, it's a hold it. You're gonna be there anyway most of the time. And then, you know, the other thing, oh shoot, I forgot what I was gonna say. Shit. What was it? I don't know. I honestly don't know. Oh, yes, like you were saying, it almost always comes up when it's convenient, right? It's so rare that I pull Established Locust and I don't have like Secure already, or it's turn 3 and I have behind enemy lines and I just bring my dumb little Commissar off the board edge to be like, I scored 7 points for just myself. Like, it all, like, I don't know. For me, I feel the same way, dude. Establish almost always comes up when I'm doing something that's conveniently going with it.
Yeah. This is another fixed objective, so you could potentially take this as a fixed. Don't do that. Just don't do that. You're telegraphing what it is you're doing, and your opponent can easily play around it and not affect their primary score. The reason we do it into like Lords of Dread is because if they don't poke out, well, then they just lose the game, right? If they're not willing to put out big knights, well, then I'm just going to outscore you on primary and have fun, I guess. But Locust is too easy to play around. I would not recommend taking it as a fixed.
Yeah. All right. The best secondary in the game, maybe? Oh, no, it's got to be second. Extend is probably better as a whole. There's just fewer downsides. But Secure No Man's Land, got to be up there. This is literally the game. You need to go stand on objectives. Go do it.
Yeah, I mean, not really much to say here. You can do it turn 1, scores end of your turn. It's only in No Man's Land. And yeah, we're holding this every time. You need to be able to, if you're not being able to get on 2 objectives, you're in dire straits. So, yeah, we love Secure No Man's Land.
Yeah, too good. Too good not to try and do it.
All right. Well, Sabotage, another action secondary. Lane, how do we feel about Sabo?
This one I think actually has kind of it makes a valley on when you want to see it. It starts off very, very strong turn 1. You're like, I can knock this out. I still have good things left in my deck. I'll take the 3 VP. That's great. And then it gets very, very much less optimal as you go into those middle rounds when you're really trying to interact with your opponent and kill them and shoot them, and having things that are just doing this for most armies it feels like a fairly big loss of efficiency by having one unit have to stand there and do this. But as you get back into that late game, as holes open up in your opponent's deployment zone, you're like, you know what, 6 VP, I can go for not shooting as long as whatever I have doing it cannot get killed before the end of my opponent's turn. If you want to talk about the best draw for bottom of turn 5, this is it. It's a 6 VP. Like, if you have something that can go do it, this is just, you're just like, oh, awesome. Who cares that I already had 15 on primary and now I get 6
Yeah.
for this and probably 4 for something else? Who doesn't need 25 points on the bottom of turn? And maybe throw in a challenger card just because, that's great.
I mean, if my Gene Stealer cult could pick one secondary to have at the end of every game, it would be Sabotage, just because it is so good and they can do it so well. If I could guarantee a secondary every battle round, or at the end, at the bottom of 5, or if I go first, whatever, it would be Sabo because I like it that much. But there are definitely situations where I toss this, where I don't want to see it because it's an action that I can't guarantee that I'm going to score on. And also, I'm putting myself in a situation where I'm giving my opponent an easy way to deny me, which is not desirable as well. But we do have the opportunity now to be able to ditch secondaries at the end of our opponent's turn. So taking a risk here isn't nearly as bad as it was previously.
Yeah, I think there's actually really something to be said about that. For me now, if I see Sabotage, if I have a resource that I really don't need to activate, great, it's gonna do it out in no man's land. But if I'm like, man, I might need this to be able to finish something off or this or that, I'll leave it where it is, and then I will say, okay, cool, I'm gonna go through my shooting phase. If I do kill everything I need to, they will Sabotage. If I don't, I now have the ability to, have them as an activation. Maybe I stage them up close enough they can grenade for me. And then it also forces my opponent, even if they're not like the most safe space for me, my opponent has to deal with that, or they knowingly give me 3 points. And so I think that's really actually worth something. You can still make them come out now, and there's no risk for you to just ditch it after they deny you. You can be like, well, it wasn't really my plan, but I didn't end up actually needing that unit. Also just attempt it. Then they have to deal with it. They can't not deal with that thing. Otherwise, you score 3VP. It just kind of puts it on your opponent a little more. And I think you actually can abuse that a little more than people think they can. They go, oh, well, I'm going to try it and it's going to get denied. Well, if you couldn't afford to recycle it anyway, still try it if you didn't need to kill something around that unit.
Yeah, no, that's all some really great feedback. And then I think it means for us, we're going to hold it.
Yeah, I think almost 3 out of 5 turns, it's a hold it. We'll say that. I think generally more times than not, you want to hold this for sure.
Sure, absolutely. Okay, another action secondary lane. We've noticed a few in this chapter approved mission pack. It's Cleanse. It's your shooting phase. 1 or more units from your army that are within range of an objective marker that is not within your deployment zone. End of your turn, if your unit performing this action is still within range of the same objective marker and you control it, that objective marker is cleansed by your army.
A solid one. Still very good. It does obviously go below secure because it requires you to do actions versus just standing there. So, you don't like to see it quite as much, but generally it's still a hold it. You need to go get on objectives. You need to have trash that is willing to just go stand there and not shoot. And I think in general, this is a hold it almost every time, except for maybe your custodes, I guess, probably were an example of, you're not actually doing this every time.
That's fair.
But
yeah, if I've lost my sisters and it's later in the game, right? Like I don't have as many scoring units and I need my wardens to be doing work. There's a world where I don't do cleanse and I get rid of it. Absolutely. This is a fixed objective. And I was just thinking about it and I'm like, who would like to do this as a fixed objective?
GSC?
Oh. No. Like big knights. Because they can do an action and still do all their bullshit. So it's like they go out onto an objective, they touch it, and then they get to cleanse, get 5 VP for doing it on 2 different objectives, which they want to be on anyways. And then, they score it.
Yeah. So is the plan you play like Lords of Dread, potentially? You take 5 big knights, right? Yeah. And then you maybe take you take a couple of other, either demons or some war dogs to do your natural, and then you just put a big knight on the middle objective every single turn. Because you got 5 of them. You got... The only thing is just make sure you are, not taking like rampagers because they cannot charge hand action. You can fight still, but you cannot make the charge move. That's the only thing to that otherwise flawless plan. So, I think it definitely can work.
I might do it. Like, I would be like tempted to do it. If I was running Lords of Dread, I'd be like, man, you're out there anyways, and it's free. And if you can get on 2, it's 5 VP. That's a lot. Okay. All right. Well, I may have spawned
VP
something
for fixed.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah,
4 VP for fixed. So it's like 4 VP guaranteed. You're on 2 objectives. You're doing that shit anyways. Yeah. I don't know. I think it's optional. I think there's a world where you run it. But let's move on to the next one. Cleanse. Are we holding it, folding it?
It's a hold most of the time.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yep. There's very few armies that don't, maybe those elite armies later in the game where their trash is gone. There's a world where you get rid of it, but it's definitely hold it. All right. Area denial. I've already hinted at it. Scores at the end of your turn. One or more units from your army. They're within 3 of the center of the battlefield. Not the objective. Measure to the center of the battlefield. And there are no enemy units within 3 or 6 to get max points. That excludes units that are battle shocked or aircraft, which is important. But this is one of the ones that I don't think enough players play defensively enough about. So,
Yes.
We've talked about infiltrators. We talked about all those things. When I infiltrate units, depending on the army, I am almost always putting them within 6 of the center of the battlefield, turn 1. As long as there's a good staging area for me to hide, I'm going to put a unit there. And I'm going to say, okay, if you get area denial turn 1, you either got to be happy with the 2 VP, or you got to go into my poxwalkers that are an inch off the wall, and it's going to be a pain in the butt to get to, and you're going to have to kill them. And some armies can't do that. And there's so many times where I've seen people make the mistake of not putting a unit there and then giving up 5 VP turn 1 for area denial.
Yeah, I think if you are playing, this is one of the most opponent skill level dependent secondary missions, I think. When it comes to doing exactly what you were talking about, always ensuring there's something they have to deal with and things like that. If you're on layout 1, your opponent should always have to come fight you in your ruin to score this at max. Every single time. And so just always ensuring that only 2 VP is available for free, at least, or with very minimal effort is so important. But if you're not doing that, if you're only putting stuff right there on the objective and there's nothing really within 6 that's more hidden and difficult to deal with, it's a hold every time. I'm going to clear you off. I'm going to put something up there myself, and I'm going to get my 5 points. But as I'm playing better and better people, it's going to get harder and harder for me to do that without having to really overcommit to the center of the board.
Absolutely. So you got to have tools that can do that, whether that's an infiltrate that has a unit that has infiltrator, a unit that has scout, or maybe a lot of movement. If you don't have a unit that infiltrates or scouts and you can't get there turn 1, you need to have a plan, especially layout 1, where you do have that great L within range of that middle objective to be able to go over there and deny that, because that denial doesn't cost you anything, right? It doesn't cost you anything to go up there. You're not doing an action. You're not exposing anything. You want to be there anyways. So let's do it properly, and let's make sure we make our opponent work for their points.
Yeah, 100%. I still think in general it is a hold it. Yeah. You're gonna probably be needing to clear out the center most of the time anyway and stuff. There are times where it is kind of a trap. Don't take the bait if your opponent has Deathwing Knights with ICC and a Judiciary behind it, and you can't actually fully commit and deal with it. Don't go running in there to be like, well, I gotta try. Yeah, don't do that, please.
Lane said to hold it. Lane said to do it.
I try. You told me I had to. Yeah, no. That's the biggest thing, is just realize when they have too many assets within that kind of center area. And also, this is one of the ones too where I think more than anything, you're really looking at your terrain layouts before you go to an event and saying, okay, what are the layouts we're working with? Am I going to have annoying units that I can put in those spots? Is it wide open? Is this a layout 2 scenario where the middle of the board there's no cover within 6 inches of the center, right? Is it kind of what are you working with? Maybe a lone op as something to kind of deny your opponent. Area denial is worth maybe teching in.
Yeah, absolutely. But area deny, definitely hold it, and we will move on. Next one is Assassinate. It's another one that we can take as fixed. It is if you kill an enemy character model with a wounds characteristic of 4 or higher, it is 4 VP for fixed. Or if it's 4 or less, it's 3 VP. Also seen people mess that up. Very easy to do. And then when end of any player's turn, if you're using tactical, 1 or more character enemy units were destroyed this turn, it is 5 VP for tactical. So you just kill a character, you get 5 VP, or all enemy characters have been destroyed, you get 5 VP as well. So this is one of those nice ones where it's retroactive. And I kind of wish Bring It Down said this as well, where it was all enemy vehicles have been destroyed. Instead of getting rid of it, I would prefer to see 4 VP there.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things too, though, where the main difference is you can take a list with no vehicles. There's no possible way to take a list without characters. So you definitely had to have killed one at some point to get this for
Sure.
assassination. I think is the only difference, but I definitely can understand, put it in the wording,
Correct.
you
That's what I'm
killed
saying.
a
Yeah.
vehicle. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Like all vehicles are destroyed, or yeah, I would say all vehicles and monsters have been destroyed. That is 4VP, or it's 4VP for killing one.
Yeah. I think it can again be a trap, but a lot of these have the potential. In general, though, it's just such a good card. You can do the same thing as Marked for Death, even like Phil was talking about. You can be like, hey, well, if you want to step out, I'm going to just keep this and I'm going to score 5 VP next turn because you did bring a character out. And if that was the only real resource they had to come deal with a problem you're presenting, just hold it and you will get 5 points the next turn. But if that is not a line of play, I think if you can't get it within 2 turns and there's nothing you're really gaining out of a board state of them holding their character back, it's a fold.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I agree. This can be a trap sometimes too, because there are some characters that are incredibly tough, like you already said it, like Lion and Azrael with the units that they're attached to, Lord of Contagions or Death Guard Demon Princes, even the Knight characters, right? The Chaos Knight characters, right? They're incredibly tough as well. And some of these could just be straight up traps where going into them is a bad decision and you could just lose the unit that you tried to put in to get Assassinate. And then also you don't score Assassinate, which is incredibly tough. So this one can be a trap for sure. So you have to be super cognizant of what you're going to score and how you're going to score it with this specifically.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think it's a solid one. Definitely can make plays around it for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Lane, this is probably a hold it for me. The majority of the time, there's just some very, very unique situations where you can't overexpose or overcommit to try to kill some of these really, really tough characters, especially if the odds are not in your favor. But if you take the risk and you fail and you're okay with that, then do what your heart desires.
Yeah, more times than not, if you are already planning to go for a character in your turn, right? If that was already your goal, it's a hold. I do agree, though. Do not overcommit to something that you really can't reliably kill unless it's something that they are going to have to just keep sending at you the next turn.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, we have another action secondary lane. It is recover assets. It's there is a stipulation for incursion mission, but we are just speaking about strike force, so there is no stipulations for strike force missions. It is another action in your shooting phase, 2 or more units from your army. If each of those is wholly within a different one of the following areas: your deployment zone, no man's land, your opponent's deployment zone, end of your turn, if either 2 or 3 of those units are on the battlefield, those units recover assets. So it's got to happen at the end of your turn. You cannot pick up a unit and try to avoid this because then the action will fail. You get 3 VP for 2, 5 VP for 3.
Yeah, this is, I don't know. It's better and worse than Sabotage for a couple of reasons. It is worse that if you want the big points, it takes 3 units doing actions and not doing anything else. And they all have to be positioned in very specific locations. And even then, it's only worth 5 VP versus the 6 that Sabotage is worth. And then if you're going for the small one, 2 units recovering, that's not as bad. I can live with it, but it's still potentially, depending on your army, like I have plenty of trash, so getting the 3 isn't very difficult for me, but for a lot of even just like not even like elite, but just even marine armies, having 2 units have to do recover, especially if you end up drawing any other action secondaries, is just, it feels terrible.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's some armies that really don't like this, being forced to do actions for multiple units, but I'll just throw it out there for y'all to put in the back of your head. This also is deployment zone dependent. So if we talk about Crucible of Battle, because it's an angled deployment, if you can go on the your short side and just get in that little corner, you could push a unit out and hit the side edge, right? Your no man's land. And you can also be in your deployment zone and not have to expose that much. Tipping point is relatively easy, should be. But you are exposing things a little bit further. Search and Destroy is actually super easy to get this because it is easy to get out of your deployment zone and do this action. And it is easy to, relatively, to get in your opponent's deployment zone depending on your army because it is so close. For me, because this now scores at the end of your turn, this is a hold it. for me.
Yeah, I would agree. I think in general, now that it's at the end of your turn, that update is a huge buff to this card. And 3 VP for only 2, most of the time that's all I'm shooting for anyway. Even if I have something that I could put into my opponent's deployment zone, I just probably don't feel comfortable having 3 units not doing something else when it comes to killing my opponent. Especially, I'm probably not going to be going for the 5, even if I have access to it. And it might be, I do, maybe it's turn 3 and I bring my Commissar into my opponent's deployment zone and I have one in my home field. If all of my units in no man's land have a job they need to be doing, I will forego 2 VP to just take the 3, be happy with it, and try to kill the things I feel like I need to kill. PvP is a great baseline for this card. If you have the extra resources, 5 feels amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Let's move on to the next one. No prisoners. This used to be, sadly, a fixed mission, but they got rid of that pretty quick. This one is really straightforward. You just need to kill enemy units. You can kill technically 3 enemy units. If you kill 3 enemy units, it is 5 VP for fixed. For fixed, each time an enemy bodyguard unit or enemy non-character unit is destroyed, you get the 2 VP. For tactical, which is nice, each time an enemy unit is destroyed, which means you kill the character and the bodyguard, that is 2. You kill the vehicle and then the character and then the bodyguard unit, that is 3. So there are ways in tactical especially to do it, and obviously they got rid of it for fixed for tournament play, so you should not be using this for tournament play, even though I would definitely in some matchups.
Yeah, it is good. You're likely, the only time it's not good is you draw this turn 1 and your opponent's completely hidden and you can't redraw it. That's the only time that this is a card you don't want to see generally, is early game.
Yeah, and then we'll get rid of it for a CP, or we might hold on to it to threaten our opponent, but this is for sure hold it.
100%. All right. Up next, attempting target. Your opponent must select one objective in no man's land to be your tempting objective marker target. And if you control that objective by the end of your turn, or by the end of either player's turn, you score 5 VP. How do you feel about tempting?
I love tempting target. I love it. My Gene Stealer cult, they love this one. I'm never not scoring it. Doesn't matter if it's turn 1 or turn 5. We are getting tempting target every time. You better protect your objective because I'm going after it. It's a great secondary for certain armies. Certain armies absolutely hate it. They can't stand it because either maybe they don't have the mobility to do it or they're not staged properly to do it. And this is one of those ones where you could say, hey, I'm always going to be prepared. If I get tempting target and my opponent selects their natural, I'm always going to be in a position to go after that objective. And that's great if your army can do that. Not every army is capable of doing that. Not every army can take advantage of tempting target, but if you build properly, you could have that opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. One of the other things that I've really, tried to work on since the new mission update, having this back in the deck, I only have so many resources to go deny. Usually I just go do it early, make sure I get it done. I have my recursion with my guardsmen, I'm going to bring it back. But if that's not something you have the capability to do, if your opponent isn't somebody who can just keep throwing waves of screens in your way, it might be worth holding your one resource that is meant to go deny their natural until this card comes up. Wait until that resource is going to get the full effect of not only going to deny, but also scoring you tempting target, because if it does come up, they're going to select their natural. And then the other piece of advice I have is if you are not an army that has the speed or, the flexibility to just always go touch your opponent's natural at any given time, make sure they can't score this on you. Make sure that no matter what, you are at least committing enough resources to your natural. You have enough of a castle, enough of a screen in front of it that you might never get tempting, but they're not either. So At least null it out. Make sure that if your game plan doesn't involve being able to go score this, your game plan at least covers them not being able to score it either.
Totally fair. Absolutely. Hold it?
It's most of the time, I think it's a hold it. It's just those few armies without mobility that you're not going to be able to do this.
Yeah, for sure. And if that's your army and you're questioning yourself, I would caveat this with, you need to ask yourself, is it the army or am I making decisions in the list building step that are specifically preventing me from doing this? And that's not a bad thing. Like I brought it up before, my custodes would ditch certain secondaries because of the fact that I wasn't built to do it. And I went 6-0 at the most recent team tournament we had, and I tied for first with Colin K for the best player for the tournament in terms of overall score. So like you can do those things, but I didn't. I went into every one of those missions with a plan to know which ones I was going to ditch in certain situations because I had to. I had to be able to do those things. And I focused on other parts of the scoring, which was primarily denying my opponent's scoring and scoring primaries out the wazoo.
Yeah. The only other thing I would add onto Tempting Target, if you know your opponent has the ability to touch all 3 of your objectives, select the middle one half the time. If they don't have trash to throw on the middle, but they have trash to throw on your natural and their own natural, select the middle. Make them put a big thing out there if that's all that can reach it. Use it to positionally make your opponent be in a worse spot. Most of these GW boards have an insanely open center. Even if it is just a trash unit, don't lose the thing that's on your natural. Make them throw that trash to the middle. Keep your natural for another turn.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. Actually, really, really good advice. I like that a lot, Lane. Hopefully, like y'all internalize that because tempting targets still matters even if you are having to give up the points. Okay, secondary mission, Call the Horde. I hate this one, Lane. I hate it. It's dumb. Even with the change, I don't like it. It never comes up. I'm not a fan. Yeah. If there are no enemy units on the battlefield, you can discard it and get a new secondary one, which is fantastic. Thank goodness. If they made me like hold on to this for some stupid reason or have to pay to cycle it, that'd be dumb. But each time an enemy infantry unit with a starting strength of 13 plus, including attached units, is destroyed, it's 5 EP. And then that's for fixed. And then for tactical, one or more enemy infantry units with a starting strength of 13 plus, including attached units destroyed. It's the same thing, but it's the end of either player's turn. So if you have like attached characters that bring it up to 13, then congratulations, you give up Call the Horde. I have seen people try to use this in a denial mechanism where they have one unit that's the Call the Horde target, and they purposely hide it to force their opponent to either try to kill the unit and fail and lose out on Call the Horde and the CP and the points. And that is a way to do it tactically. Overall, this is usually a dud in the majority of games I play in.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, like I have my command squad that I usually run solo, but in any game where there is indirect as a threat, I will attach them to a unit of 10 guardsmen, and that does mean I have something that is Call the Horde worthy, like it is a viable target for this. And in general, my opponent just ends up probably having to recycle it. It's nice to force them to do it, but sure. I don't think this is worth building around. I think it's still, I agree, I think it is a bad secondary in general as far as the structure goes. I think they need to make it potentially easier. I mean, we have something for kill characters, we have something for, kill vehicles, and then we have something for just kill things. If they want an infantry specific one, it should either be like a bare minimum of wounds, and we can make it like a fairly low bar. If you kill, a single unit that has, 10 or fewer wounds, it's worth 2 VP. That way 5-man Marines with 2 wounds apiece, like that scores. A 3-man of 3 wound Marines doesn't score it, and then as soon as you get to, a cumulative of like 15 total wounds, so then you score like 5 or 4, whatever it is. But just adjusting it in that way, I think would make it a lot better to where it comes up more often, and it's a tiered system like almost every other kill secondary.
Yeah, anything would be better than what we got currently because, like I said, majority of the time it's dead. For me, it's a fold it, and that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
The only time I'll take Call the Horde as a fixed is when I'm playing Patrick Love's Shamble Route Horde and he's running 20-man Plague Marine or Poxwalkers. I've thought about taking it into the GOAT detachment with the Zangors where they're running those big 20-man. There are very few armies that can consistently kill 20-mans. My Death Guard are one of them, but definitely would have to put some serious thought into it for sure.
Yeah. If you see Recon Guard, or maybe like a host of Ascension GSC list like that, I think it's also viable then as a potential option. But in general, yeah, it's a fold it. You're not playing with this.
Yeah. Okay, extend battle lines. This one's relatively straightforward, and what I think Lane and I would both agree, probably the best secondary in the game because it is so easy to score. You control an objective in no man's land, and you control the objective within your deployment zone. You get 4 VP. You should be scoring this every time you get it.
You're almost always going to be needing to either keep holding your natural or at least secure it for the first turn or re-secure it if you've been denied. You're generally just like, this is It might be worth one less VP than secure, but the two objectives you have to hold are almost always going to be safer than the ones you would have to hold for secure.
Yep, absolutely. Hold it.
Hold it for sure.
Hold it.
The holding
Yeah.
it ist of cards.
All right, Lane. We have 2 left. Overwhelming force. Each time an enemy unit started this turn within range of an objective marker is destroyed. 3 VP.
Yeah, it's a hold it every round but round 1. The only card that for some reason doesn't have the built-in redraw when it definitely should.
Yeah. And it does have a note in there that the leader and bodyguard units count separately for the purpose of scoring the secondary mission, provided that the attached unit started the turn within range of an objective marker. So that is super important, because if the bodyguard unit is within range of the objective marker, but the attached unit is not, it would not count towards overwhelming force. But if the character is on there or the attached unit is touching the objective and the bodyguard unit is as well, then they would both count towards overwhelming force, which is super, super important.
Yeah. If you're, especially like in combat, if you're charging in to go deal with something your opponent has on there, and you have the opportunity to charge in and leave your character off the objective, and then choose not to consolidate in onto the objective after and just put the rest of the unit on there, it's something to keep in mind, because then your opponent at least has to target something else on a different objective, or at least on that objective, and that one single attached unit doesn't give up all 5 points.
Yep, absolutely. Hold it, except for turn 1.
Except for turn 1, that's a big hold. Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, unless you can absolutely score it, it does hurt to pull this turn 1. Okay, last one. It's a new one. It's Display of Might. If it's the first battle round, you shuffle this back into the secondary mission deck, but it's very straightforward. There are more units from your army than from your enemy's army, wholly within no man's land. 4 VP. You gotta be wholly within, and it's more of your units versus more of your enemy unit or your opponent's units. Lane, how we feel about a Display of Might?
Well, as a guard player, generally pretty good. I run even a little bit more elite version of guard probably than other people, but even then, generally I have the ability to at least kill enough of my opponent that I can score this. And even if it means you have to stage a little more aggressively or push a couple things up a little bit, display isn't terribly hard to score. As you're going into the game, I think it's good. There's obviously going to be certain matchups where you're like, well, depending on what you play, if you play big knights, if only they counted as 2 units like they do when you're deploying, this would be still a great card, But for the most part, for most people who don't have hyper elite armies, it's a keep. 4 VP, move it to the middle. You're probably going to have to do that anyway.
Yeah, and for those hyper elite armies, there are ways you can score this. You just got to go kill things. And if you're a hyper elite army that can't kill things, we need to talk about your army list building, because that's kind of your job. You got to be able to kill things if you're going to run a hyper elite army. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. But Display of Might is good. There's a lot of armies that can do it well. It's got a lot of tools. You have control over it. But the one thing you need to be cognizant of is the one strat that we said that's a power play strat that can actually have an impact on this, which is
Rapid Ingress.
So when you're counting up your units with your opponent and you're like, okay, you have 5 units in here, the second question you have is, do you have anything in reserve? Well, you do. So technically you could put 6 units in there. Yes, I could. Okay, great. That means I need to have 7 in there, or I need to kill one. That way I can ensure, even if you rapid ingress, that you can't tie me, or you cannot tie me, which is the worst feeling. Yeah. So you got to be cognizant of that, as well as if some armies, like my Gene Stealer Cult, can bring in multiple units. With like my Raveners, I can bring in my Raveners and another unit. So there are some armies that can do that, and you need to be cognizant if your opponent can do that as well.
Yeah, that is a great point when it comes to Display of Might. Yeah, I think it's a hold it. I think that's our last card.
It is.
Yeah. Any final thoughts as you're thinking about secondaries, Phil?
The decision making for making or breaking a holding or folding secondaries can be game ending or game winning for you, because there are situations where at the beginning of the game you made the decision to go out there and score secondary, or you made the decision to I don't know if I want to sacrifice that unit or not, and you lose by a point or you win by a point. There's nothing to say like the butterfly effect is real. Like, okay, if I move that out there, it changes the entire game because like everyone's going to play differently. But you need to take into consideration from turn one, when the game starts, when you deploy, like how you're deploying to get after the secondaries you need to get after. Are you staged to score area denial? Are you staged to score secure and establish locus and extend battle lines, right? Like, engage on all fronts, right? Like, are you in positions to score turn one when you deploy all of these things? And the decisions you make can have an impact. You know, when I talk about coaching players, one of the things they say is, I feel like I make mistakes at the beginning of the game that I just like, oh, I made that mistake and now the game's over. There are some situations where that can definitely happen, but I would say like there are ways to get around of it. But if we plan on scoring the secondaries, we need to score turn one when we deploy. I promise you are starting off on the right foot for a game, and you're going to be much better off than not planning those things and then drawing a secondary that you didn't plan for, and then, you know, kind of shit out of luck.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great point. For me personally, like I am never surprised if I am going to recycle at the top of my turn about 3 cards, and then I'm also going to ditch 3 cards throughout the course of a game. I just, you know, I have an army that scores secondaries very, very well, but if I get the wrong things at the wrong time, without hesitation, I am not going to waste resources doing an underperforming secondary. I'm just going to go ahead, take my CP, and bank it for, you know, hopefully, you know, a game changing stratagem later in the game. And being able to just have more CP where I can feel more comfortable cycling cards into the later turns as well.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Those are some really great thoughts, Lane, and I hope for all our viewers super helpful.
Yeah, I think we crushed it. I know this was a little bit longer of a video,
Yeah.
but you know, we really wanted to give some good insight into the analysis of what's going through our minds as cards come up throughout the game. How worth it is it really to try to get those couple of VP, especially on some of those cards that really have a lot of terms and conditions to get them done. But hopefully you found this helpful. Phil, any other final thoughts?
No, make sure you have the cards on you. Make sure you know which ones you can get rid of, right? That you can discard. Don't fall into the trap of like thinking that you have to keep a secondary and realizing you didn't. So have the cards or print them out, or I don't know, tattoo it on your hand, say which ones we could actually discard. Don't follow the last one. I don't want to see dumb tattoos of y'all writing stuff on your hand. But just be aware of what you can do, right? And which secondaries are available. There's no such thing as hidden information for secondaries. So like if you ask your opponent, hey, what secondaries do you have left? Which is a question I ask often. That is not hidden information, right? Like, you know, the secondaries that have been pulled, they can either, if they're using the app, Tabletop Battles, or if they're using the cards, that is not hidden information. You can ask that and you should get the correct answer.
Yeah. Yeah. Just shuffle those cards up if you look through them, you know, just the real. Make sure you're not just like, oh, this is coming next. Let me just leave that there. But anyway, yeah, super great tips. Hopefully y'all enjoyed it. Do not forget to like and subscribe and join the Discord if you want to continue the discussion. And last but not least, as always, do not forget that victory isn't given, it is forged, and it's forged right here on Mastercrafted. We will see you all next time.
See you guys.